Businessman humiliates a woman in the store and sees her. The next day in his boss's living room, he couldn't believe his eyes. Landon Sinclair's polished leather shoes clicked against the linoleum floor of Harrington's grocery, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across his weary face. At 35, he was the youngest executive at Apex Innovations, a rising star in the tech industry of Burlington, Vermont. His tailored suit, usually a source of confidence, now felt constricting after a grueling day of meetings and presentations. As he navigated the aisles, searching for a quick dinner to microwave in his empty apartment, Landon's mind raced with the day's events. The pressure to close the Nexus deal was mounting, and he could feel the weight of expectations from the board pressing down on his shoulders. Lost in thought, he barely registered the soft voice beside him. "Excuse me, sir. Would you mind helping me reach that box of cereal on the top shelf?" Landon's eyes flicked to the source of the interruption. A petite woman with auburn hair and warm brown eyes stood beside him, gesturing toward a high shelf. Under normal circumstances, he might have obliged, but today his patience had worn thin. With a dismissive wave of his hand, Landon muttered, "Can't you see I'm busy? Ask someone else." He turned away, missing the hurt that flashed across the woman's face as he strode toward the checkout counter. As he paid for his sad array of convenience foods, a nagging feeling tugged at the back of Landon's mind. Had he been too harsh? But the thought was quickly buried beneath the mountain of work-related worries that dominated his consciousness. Little did Landon know that this brief encounter would set in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything he thought he knew about success, relationships, and his own character. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within Apex Innovations' gleaming headquarters. Landon strode into the office, his customary air of confidence masking the anxiety that gnawed at his insides. Today was the day they'd be meeting with the external consultant who would be advising on the Nexus project, a deal that could make or break Landon's career. As he entered the conference room, Landon's eyes widened in shock. There, engaged in animated conversation with CEO Theodore Hargrove, was the woman from the grocery store. Her auburn hair was now swept into an elegant updo, and her casual attire had been replaced by a smart business suit. But there was no mistaking those warm brown eyes, now regarding him with a mix of recognition and cool professionalism. "Ah, Landon! There you are!" Theodore boomed, clapping him on the shoulder. "I'd like you to meet Olivia Hargrove, our new external consultant for the Nexus project. She's just flown in from our San Francisco office and brings a wealth of experience in tech mergers." Landon's mouth went dry as the implications hit him. Olivia Hargrove, the CEO's daughter, the woman he'd rudely dismissed just yesterday. Olivia extended her hand, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "It's a pleasure to meet you officially, Mr. Sinclair. I look forward to working closely with you on this project." As Landon shook her hand, he could feel the heat of embarrassment creeping up his neck. How could he have been so careless? But pride quickly overrode his discomfort. He was Landon Sinclair, the wunderkind of Apex Innovations. He wouldn't let this minor hiccup derail his plans for success. Little did he know that his journey was just beginning, and the lessons that lay ahead would challenge everything he thought he knew about himself and his place in the world. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of strategy sessions, late-night conference calls, and mounting tension. Olivia Hargrove proved to be more than just the CEO's daughter. She was a force to be reckoned with, armed with sharp intellect and years of experience navigating complex corporate mergers. Landon, however, was not one to cede control easily. He bristled at Olivia's suggestions, convinced that his approach was the only path to success. Their meetings became a battlefield of clashing ideas and thinly veiled barbs. "Mr. Sinclair," Olivia said one afternoon, her voice tight with frustration, "I strongly advise against pushing for such aggressive terms with Nexus. We need to build trust, not alienate them." Landon leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing at his lips. "With all due respect, Ms. Hargrove, I've been working on this deal for months. I think I know what Nexus wants better than someone who just parachuted in from the West Coast." The conference room fell silent, the other team members exchanging uncomfortable glances. Olivia's eyes flashed with anger, but she maintained her composure. "Very well," she said coolly. "I've made my recommendations. The decision ultimately is yours." As the meeting adjourned, Landon felt a surge of satisfaction. He'd put the consultant in her place and reasserted his dominance over the project. But a nagging doubt lingered in the back of his mind. What if she was right? That doubt grew stronger as the negotiations with Nexus progressed. Landon's aggressive tactics were met with increasing resistance from the other company. What had started as a promising partnership was now teetering on the brink of collapse. In a last-ditch effort to salvage the deal, Landon called for an emergency meeting with the Nexus executives. As he presented his final offer, he could feel the room's energy shift. The Nexus CEO's face hardened and his advisors began whispering urgently. "Mr. Sinclair," the Nexus CEO said, rising to his feet, "I'm afraid we cannot accept these terms. They show a fundamental lack of trust and respect for our company's values. Unless there are significant changes, I believe we're done here." The words hit Landon like a physical blow. He watched, helpless, as years of work crumbled before his eyes. As the Nexus team filed out of the room, Landon caught sight of Olivia standing in the doorway, her expression a mix of disappointment and resignation. The fallout was swift and merciless. Theodore Hargrove called Landon into his office the next morning, his usual jovial demeanor replaced by stern disappointment. "Landon, I've always had faith in your abilities," he began, "but your handling of the Nexus deal has raised serious concerns. Not only did you disregard the advice of our consultant, but you've also created a toxic environment within the team." Landon's heart raced as he realized the gravity of the situation. "Sir, I can explain." Theodore held up a hand, silencing him. "I've heard enough explanations, Landon. At this point, I believe it's best for everyone if you take some time away from the company. Consider this a temporary suspension, an opportunity for reflection and growth." The words echoed in Landon's ears as he numbly packed up his desk, avoiding the curious stares of his colleagues. As he stepped into the elevator for what felt like the last time, he caught a glimpse of Olivia watching him from across the lobby. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and in that instant Landon felt the full weight of his actions come crashing down upon him. As the elevator doors closed, Landon leaned against the wall, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. He had always believed that his ambition and confidence were the keys to his success. Now, standing alone in the descending elevator, he was forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Perhaps they had been the architects of his downfall all along. The days following Landon's suspension blurred together in a haze of self-pity and resentment. His spacious apartment, once a symbol of his success, now felt like a gilded cage. He alternated between pacing restlessly and staring blankly at the Burlington skyline, replaying every misstep that had led him to this point. It was on a particularly gloomy afternoon, as rain pelted against his windows, that Landon finally forced himself to confront the harsh reality of his situation. He sat at his kitchen island, an untouched cup of coffee growing cold before him, and began to list out every interaction he'd had with Olivia Hargrove and the Nexus team. As he wrote, a pattern emerged that made him increasingly uncomfortable. Time and again, he had dismissed valuable input, steamrolled over concerns, and prioritized his own ego over the success of the project. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. He had become the very type of executive he had once despised. Landon's thoughts were interrupted by a gentle knock at his door. Puzzled, he made his way to the entrance, wondering who could be visiting him in his current state of disgrace. As he opened the door, he found himself face to face with the last person he expected to see, Olivia Hargrove. "Ms. Hargrove," he stammered, acutely aware of his disheveled appearance. What are you doing here?" Olivia's expression was unreadable as she regarded him. "May I come in, Mr. Sinclair? I believe we have some things to discuss." Numbly, Landon stepped aside to let her enter. As she made her way to his living room, he frantically tried to gather his thoughts. Was she here to gloat? To deliver the final blow to his career? Olivia settled onto his couch, her posture perfectly composed despite the tension in the air. "Mr. Sinclair," she began, "I want you to know that I took no pleasure in how things unfolded with the Nexus deal." Landon's defenses immediately rose. "I'm sure you didn't," he said. unable to keep the bitterness from his voice. "I suppose you're here to make sure I've been sufficiently humbled." To his surprise, Olivia's expression softened. "Actually, I'm here because I see potential in you, Landon. Potential that's been overshadowed by arrogance and a misguided sense of what it means to be a leader." Her words caught him off guard, and for once, Landon found himself at a loss. I don't understand," he admitted. Olivia leaned forward, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made him want to look away. "Let me be clear. Your behavior was unacceptable. You endangered a crucial deal and created a toxic work environment. But," she paused, considering her next words carefully, "I also see a driven individual who's capable of great things when he's not blinded by his own ego." Landon sank into the armchair across from her, suddenly feeling exhausted. "What does it matter now?" he asked. "I've ruined everything. My career, my reputation." "Only if you let this be the end of your story," Olivia replied. "Landon, you have a choice to make. You can wallow in self-pity and resentment, or you can use this as an opportunity for growth, to become the kind of leader that inspires rather than intimidates." As her words sank in, Landon felt something shift within him. The anger and defensiveness that had been his constant companion since the suspension began to give way to a glimmer of hope. "How?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "How do I even begin to fix this?" Olivia's smile was gentle but determined. "It starts with humility, Landon, with the willingness to admit your mistakes and learn from them. Are you ready to do that?" For a moment, Landon teetered on the edge of a decision. He could feel his old instincts urging him to lash out, to place the blame on anyone but himself. But as he looked into Olivia's eyes, seeing not judgment, but a genuine desire to help, he made his choice. "Yes," he said, surprised by the steadiness in his voice. "I'm ready." Olivia nodded, a look of approval crossing her face. "Then let's get to work. Your journey back won't be easy, Landon. It will require you to confront some uncomfortable truths about yourself and your leadership style. Are you prepared for that?" Landon took a deep breath, feeling as though he was standing on the precipice of a new chapter in his life. "I am," he said, and for the first time in weeks, he felt a spark of determination ignite within him. As Olivia began to outline a plan for his personal and professional development, Landon realized that his suspension wasn't an ending, but a beginning. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time, he was ready to face it with open eyes and an open heart. Little did he know that this conversation with Olivia was just the first step in a transformative journey that would challenge everything he thought he knew about success, leadership, and his own capacity for change. The weeks that followed Olivia's unexpected visit were some of the most challenging of Landon's life. True to her word, she had crafted a rigorous program of self-reflection, skill building, and community service designed to reshape his understanding of leadership and his place in the world. Landon's days, once filled with board meetings and power lunches, now revolved around a very different schedule. Mornings were dedicated to intense self-reflection exercises and journaling, forcing him to confront the root causes of his arrogance and need for control. Afternoons found him volunteering at local non-profits, where he worked alongside people from all walks of life, learning the value of teamwork and humility. One particularly transformative experience came during his time at the Burlington Community Center. Tasked with organizing a fundraiser for after-school programs, Landon found himself working closely with Mira Chen, a retired schoolteacher with a no-nonsense attitude and a heart of gold. "You think you can just waltz in here with your fancy ideas and take over?" Mira had challenged him on his first day, seeing right through his attempts to dominate the planning process. "This isn't your boardroom, mister. Big shot. Here we listen to each other and work together." Initially stung by her words, Landon soon came to appreciate Mira's wisdom and the collaborative spirit she fostered among the volunteers. As the weeks passed, he found himself genuinely enjoying the camaraderie and sense of purpose that came from working towards a common goal. The fundraiser, when it finally arrived, was a resounding success. As Landon watched children and parents alike enjoying the festivities, he felt a warmth in his chest that no corporate victory had ever provided. Mira approached him, a rare smile on her face. "You did good, kid," she said, patting his arm. "Looks like you're learning after all." These moments of growth were interspersed with regular check-ins with Olivia, who pushed him to dig deeper and challenge his long-held beliefs about success and leadership. Their conversations, once fraught with tension, gradually evolved into a mentorship that Landon came to deeply value. "Leadership isn't about having all the answers, Landon," Olivia told him during one of their sessions. "It's about creating an environment where everyone feels empowered to contribute their best ideas. Remember how it felt when you dismissed my input on the Nexus deal? That's how your team felt every time you shut them down." The realization hit Landon like a ton of bricks. He thought back to all the times he had steamrolled over his colleagues' suggestions, convinced that his way was the only way. "I've been such a fool," he murmured. Olivia's expression softened. "The important thing is that you're recognizing it now. True strength lies in admitting our mistakes and working to correct them." As the end of his suspension approached, Landon felt like a changed man. The sharp edges of his personality had been smoothed, replaced by a newfound empathy and humility. He had learned to listen, truly listen, to others, to value diverse perspectives, and to lead by inspiring rather than intimidating. But a nagging doubt still plagued him. Would it be enough? Had he truly changed? Or would he revert to his old ways when faced with the pressures of corporate life? The answer came in an unexpected form. 2 days before his scheduled return to Apex Innovations, Landon received a call from Theodore Hargrove. "Landon, my boy," the CEO's voice boomed through the phone. "I hope this time away has been enlightening for you." "It has, sir," Landon replied, his heart racing. "More than I could have ever imagined." "Glad to hear it," Theodore continued, "because I have a proposition for you. We're launching a new leadership training initiative aimed at fostering a more collaborative and inclusive culture within the company. Olivia has recommended you for a key role in this program." Landon's breath caught in his throat. "Sir?" Landon's voice wavered, unsure if he had heard correctly. Theodore's chuckle came through the line. "That's right, Landon. Olivia believes, and I agree, that your journey over these past months makes you uniquely qualified to help shape the next generation of leaders at Apex. You've experienced firsthand the pitfalls of unchecked ambition and the transformative power of humility and teamwork." Landon felt a mix of emotions wash over him. Gratitude, excitement, and a touch of apprehension. I don't know what to say, sir. This is an incredible opportunity." "It's also a test, Landon," Theodore replied, his tone growing serious. "You'll be working closely with Olivia to develop and implement this program. It's a chance to prove that your growth is genuine and lasting. Are you up for the challenge?" Without hesitation, Landon answered, "Yes, sir. I won't let you down." As he hung up the phone, Landon felt a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. This wasn't just about climbing the corporate ladder or proving his worth. It was about using his experiences, both positive and negative, to make a real difference in the company and the lives of his colleagues. The next morning, Landon stood outside the Apex Innovations building, taking a deep breath before stepping through the doors. The lobby, once a familiar territory, he strode through with unearned confidence now felt different. He noticed the security guard's friendly nod, the receptionist's warm smile, small gestures he had overlooked in his previous single-minded focus on success. As the elevator doors opened on the executive floor, Landon steeled himself for the reactions of his colleagues. To his surprise, he was met with cautious smiles and tentative welcomes. Word of his new role had already spread, and there was a palpable curiosity about what this meant for the company's future. Olivia was waiting for him outside the conference room, a knowing smile on her face. "Ready to begin your next chapter, Mr. St. Clair?" Landon nodded, feeling a mix of nervousness and determination. "As ready as I'll ever be, and please call me Landon." As they entered the room together, Landon felt the weight of expectation on his shoulders. But this time, it wasn't a burden. It was a challenge he was eager to meet, armed with the hard-won wisdom of his journey. Little did he know that the greatest tests of his newfound perspective were yet to come, as he navigated the complex dynamics of mentoring others while continuing to grow himself. The launch of Apex Innovations' leadership training initiative, dubbed Project Synergy, thrust Landon into a role he had never imagined for himself, that of a mentor and guide. Working alongside Olivia, he found himself sharing the painful lessons of his past with a group of rising stars within the company, each grappling with their own ambitions and insecurities. One participant in particular tested Landon's newfound patience and empathy. Cassandra Reeves, a brilliant young product manager, reminded Landon uncomfortably of his former self. Her sharp intellect was matched only by her cutting remarks and tendency to dismiss the ideas of others. During one particularly heated workshop session, Cassandra's behavior came to a head. As the group discussed strategies for fostering innovation, she interrupted a colleague mid-sentence. "That's the most ridiculous idea I've ever heard," she scoffed. "If you can't come up with anything better than that, maybe you should let the adults handle this project." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to Landon to see how he would handle the situation. For a moment, he felt a flash of his old anger, a desire to put Cassandra in her place with a biting retort. But as he met Olivia's watchful gaze, he took a deep breath, centering himself. "Cassandra," Landon began, his voice calm but firm. "I'd like you to stay behind after the session, please. For now, let's hear the rest of what Tyler was saying. Every idea has value, even if we don't immediately see it." As the workshop continued, Landon could feel Cassandra's resentment simmering. When the other participants had filed out, she remained in her seat, arms crossed defiantly. "I suppose this is where you tell me I'm not being a team player," she challenged. Landon pulled up a chair, sitting across from her. "Actually," he said, "this is where I tell you a story about a young executive who thought he had all the answers. An executive who let his arrogance and ambition blind him to the value of collaboration and diverse perspectives." As Landon recounted his own journey, the highs of his early success, the crushing lows of his suspension, and the transformative path back, he saw something shift in Cassandra's expression. The defensiveness in her posture slowly melted away, replaced by a look of recognition and perhaps a glimmer of hope. "I see so much potential in you, Cassandra," Landon concluded, "but I also see the pitfalls that await if you continue down this path. The question is, are you willing to learn from my mistakes, or do you need to make them yourself?" For a long moment, Cassandra was silent, her gaze fixed on the table between them. When she finally looked up, there were tears in her eyes. I don't want to be that person," she whispered, "but I don't know how to change." Landon felt a surge of empathy, remembering his own struggles. "It's not easy," he admitted, "but you've already taken the first step by recognizing the need for change. Let me help you, Cassandra. Together we can build a better future for you and for Apex." As they continued to talk, Landon realized that in helping Cassandra, he was also reinforcing his own growth. Each challenge she faced, each small victory in changing her behavior, served as a reminder of how far he had come, and how vigilant he needed to remain to avoid slipping back into old habits. The weeks turned into months, and Project Synergy began to bear fruit. The culture at Apex Innovations was slowly but surely shifting. Meetings that were once dominated by a few loud voices now hummed with collaborative energy. Innovation flourished, as employees at all levels felt empowered to share their ideas. Landon, once seen as an unapproachable figure, found himself sought after for advice and mentorship. He worked tirelessly, not for personal glory, but for the genuine satisfaction of seeing others grow and succeed. But amid the success, a new challenge loomed on the horizon. Apex Innovations was on the verge of its biggest acquisition yet, a merger that would catapult the company into the upper echelons of the tech world. As the details of the deal were hammered out, Landon found himself face to face with a ghost from his past. The CEO of the company they were acquiring was none other than Marcus Reeves, the former head of Nexus. The deal Landon had nearly ruined with his arrogance. As they sat across from each other in the boardroom, Landon could feel the weight of their history hanging in the air. "Mr. Sinclair," Marcus said, his tone carefully neutral, "I must admit I was surprised to hear you would be part of these negotiations." Landon took a deep breath, feeling Olivia's supportive presence beside him. This was more than a business deal. It was a test of everything he had learned, a chance to right the wrongs of the past and prove that his transformation was real and lasting. "Mr. Reeves," Landon began, his voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in his stomach. "Before we begin, I owe you an apology. As Landon spoke, laying bare his past mistakes and the journey that had brought him to this moment, he could see the surprise and then the gradual softening in Marcus's expression. The tension in the room began to dissipate, replaced by an atmosphere of cautious optimism. By the end of the meeting, not only had they made significant progress on the merger, but Landon had also earned Marcus's respect, something he never could have achieved in his previous incarnation. As they left the boardroom, Olivia squeezed Landon's arm. "You did it," she said softly. "You faced your past and came out stronger. I'm proud of you, Landon." Her words filled him with a warmth that no corporate victory had ever provided. For the first time, Landon felt truly worthy of the second chance he had been given. But as he basked in the glow of this triumph, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered a warning. The greatest test of his newfound wisdom was yet to come. As the merger between Apex Innovations and Marcus Reeves's company, Novatech, progressed, Landon found himself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. The integration of two corporate cultures, each with its own set of values and practices, proved to be a monumental task. It was a challenge that would have overwhelmed the old Landon, but the man he had become approached it with a mix of humility, determination, and collaborative spirit. One crisp autumn morning, as leaves of gold and crimson drifted past the windows of Apex's headquarters, Landon received an unexpected summons to Theodore Hargrove's office. As he made his way through the familiar corridors, he couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed since that fateful day when he had been suspended. Theodore greeted him with a warm smile, gesturing for Landon to take a seat. "Landon, my boy," he began, his voice carrying a note of gravity that immediately put Landon on alert. "You've done remarkable work these past months. The success of Project Synergy, your handling of the Novatech merger. It's been nothing short of transformative for this company." "Thank you, sir," Landon replied, a mix of pride and humility coloring his voice. "It's been a team effort, truly." Theodore nodded approvingly. "And that, Landon, is precisely why I've called you here today." He paused, leaning forward in his chair. "I'm retiring at the end of the year, and the board and I have been discussing succession plans." Landon's heart began to race, a familiar surge of ambition rising within him. Could it be? "We want you to take over as CEO, Landon," Theodore said, his eyes twinkling. "So your journey, from rising star to cautionary tale and back to inspirational leader, makes you uniquely qualified to guide Apex into its next chapter." For a moment, Landon was speechless. The offer he had once dreamed of, schemed for, and nearly destroyed himself pursuing was now being handed to him. But instead of unbridled joy, he felt a weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "Sir, I'm honored," Landon began, choosing his words carefully. "But may I have some time to consider? This isn't a decision to be made lightly." Theodore's smile widened. "And that, Landon, is exactly why we want you for this role. Take all the time you need." As Landon left the office, his mind was a whirlwind of emotions and thoughts. He found himself walking to the small park across from Apex's building, seeking solitude to process this unexpected turn of events. Sitting on a bench, watching the autumn leaves dance in the breeze, Landon reflected on his journey. He thought of the arrogant young executive he had once been, so certain of his path to the top. He remembered the humbling fall from grace, the painful lessons learned during his suspension, and he considered the man he had become, a leader who valued collaboration, empathy, and personal growth above all else. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, Landon made his decision. He pulled out his phone and dialed a familiar number. "Olivia, it's Landon. Do you have a moment to talk?" An hour later, Landon stood in Theodore's office once more, his resolve firm and his vision clear. "I've made my decision, sir," he began, meeting Theodore's expectant gaze. "I'm deeply honored by the offer, but I don't believe I'm the right person to be CEO, at least not yet." Theodore's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Go on," he encouraged. Landon took a deep breath. "The lessons I've learned about leadership, humility, and the value of diverse perspectives are too important to be limited to just one person at the top. I propose instead that we create a new leadership structure for Apex, a council of leaders, each bringing their unique strengths and experiences to guide the company forward." As Landon outlined his vision, a collaborative leadership model that would foster innovation, accountability, and continuous growth. He could see the spark of excitement ignite in Theodore's eyes. "It's bold, Landon," Theodore mused when he had finished. "Unconventional, certainly. But then again, that's always been Apex's strength, hasn't it? Tell me more." Over the next few hours, Landon and Theodore hashed out the details of this new leadership structure. They identified key individuals from across the company, including Olivia Cassandra, whose growth had been remarkable, and even Marcus Reeves from Novatech, who would form the inaugural Leadership Council. As dawn broke over Burlington, casting the city in a soft golden light, Landon stood at the window of the conference room, a sense of peace settling over him. He had been offered the pinnacle of corporate success, the CEO position he had once coveted above all else, and he had chosen a different path. A path not of personal glory, but of shared success and collective growth. Olivia joined him at the window, a proud smile on her face. "You've come a long way, Landon Sinclair," she said softly. Landon nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "We all have," he replied, "and we've got so much further to go together." As they stood there watching the sun rise on a new era for Apex Innovations, Landon reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. From the arrogant executive dismissing a stranger in a grocery store to a leader who understood the true meaning of success, it had been a path filled with challenges, growth, and unexpected turns. But as he looked at the faces of his colleagues, now friends and partners in this grand experiment, Landon knew that the best was yet to come. The future stretched out before them, full of possibility and promise, ready to be shaped by the collective wisdom and shared vision of a team united in purpose. And in that moment, Landon Sinclair felt something he had never truly experienced in all his years of corporate climbing, a deep, abiding sense of fulfillment. He had found his true calling, not in being at the top, but in lifting others up alongside him. As the first rays of sunlight bathed the Apex building in a warm glow, Landon smiled. The journey of personal growth and leadership was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. But this time, he wasn't walking the path alone, and that, he realized, made all the difference.